Drilling fluids touch just about everything in the drilling process. We're here to deconstruct the drilling process and drilling fluid concepts to provide a deeper understanding of our industry. In each episode, we'll share information, talk to interesting people, and maybe share a few stories along the way. Welcome to the Flowline, a production of AES Drilling Fluids, brought to you by Matt Offenbacher and Justin Gauthier.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of, you guessed it, the Flowline. If you're tuning in, hopefully you're having an enjoyable beginning of the summer. It's been wet here in Houston. I don't remember if it was like this last year or the year before, but is June typically wet like this?
This has been a little crazy. However, I think it was last year, the year before, where it was like the average June temperature was like 3 degrees lower, and it was basically just because we got so much rain.
Okay.
And so I don't think it's like June is always, I think, a kind of a wild card.
Yeah.
But we got an inch of rain in like 15 minutes in my neighborhood. Like the intersection was flooded, and like I was worried about people's cars and homes.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of rain keeps coming.
Never ceases to amaze just how much water you can get coming out of the sky at one time, where it's like just sheets of rain. It's wild. And actually, if you live in Katy, and maybe Houston heard of it too, crazy lightning, and there was a house, probably as the bird flies less than a quarter mile, that got struck by lightning and burned the whole thing down.
Oh, jeez, that's awful.
Yeah, super sad. Obviously, the family, I think from what we've heard, they were out of town. And neighbors saw smoke just like coming from the house, called fire department, whatever.
Yeah.
They came, and yeah, we saw some pictures just from friends and folks that live in the area. Obviously, like it's a big thing, and so right, the whole thing just gone.
Awful.
Yeah, it was wild. So I don't know how you avoid that. It's just like a freak of nature, obviously. But with that being said,
lightning striking is supposed to be rare.
So
And
I'm going to say this, and I don't know if my uncle was telling me the truth, because I had an uncle, Uncle Les, and rest in peace, he passed away a couple years ago, but he told me he got struck by lightning twice. Now, I wouldn't doubt it. He lived on a farm in Alberta, and so I don't know if it was just one of those like family stories that were sort of maybe true, but maybe not really. But the reason I think he might have been joking with me is that he told me for a long time that he never lost his baby teeth because he had small teeth.
Oh.
And I believed him up until I was like old enough to realize like that's not actually
not
possible.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but as a child, I thought that was cool that he still had his baby teeth, which turned out not to be true. But so be careful if you're around lightning. And even like whether you're golfing or you're out with friends at a pool, or those warning signs are serious.
Yeah, it's no joke.
Yeah, and so we actually had a little bit of a delay this weekend with some softball. We had a tournament up in Willis. And yeah, it was nasty. Little lightning, so of course everyone had to take cover for a while. But anyway, hopefully the rest of the summer's not as wet. But it is nice because we're about to probably get 150,000 degrees, and it's gonna be hot. But the last thing I want to share before we get deep into the details, tell us about the adventure you're about to embark on up in Colorado.
I'm quite the adventurer, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
So I'm headed to Denver. You can, I guess, the date of this recording, you'll figure out when this actually was. But the story, I'm going to go see Jimmy Eat World at Red Rocks. They're playing one night only with Sunny Day Real Estate and the Get Up Kids. So these are like 3 bands I loved in college.
Yeah. And
the best show I ever went to was probably one of the best shows. Top 2, if not the best, was this is the 25th anniversary of their album Bleed American.
Yeah.
Clarity, the preceding album, didn't do very well, but it is the perfect emo album.
Okay.
I love that album. Listen to it all the time. Have it on vinyl. Like,
no way.
Love that album.
Okay.
Anyways, so Jimmy Eat World wasn't really as big. That album didn't take off like they'd hoped. And then they released Bleed American and started touring, but the title Bleed American is sort of like Born in the USA. It's a little cynical about being American.
Yeah.
So 9/11 happens. They suspend their tour and they rename the album, and it just becomes like a self-titled album.
Huh.
But they come back and so then they're on MTV and stuff. They get huge. They start playing stadiums and they say, we're going to come back and honor all those shows.
Oh.
So I got to see them at Emo's with me and like 1,500 of my best friends. Well, like the next night they're playing in some stadium with 30,000 people.
Dude, that's crazy.
And so like, and they knew that like most of us were people who were like, liked them before it was cool kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the set list was really like, really amazing and like very memorable.
Yeah.
So when my buddy told me, hey, this show's coming, like, and it's one night only where Sunny Day Real Estate and the Get Up Kids are going to be opening for them, I was like, whoo, because I went to South by Southwest a couple of years ago. This is me and my music adventures to see Sunny Day Real Estate, the Get Up Kids, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we travel a lot. I had some miles.
Heck yeah.
All that kind of thing. So, my adventure, abandoning my loving wife and children, will be to do an overnight trip to Denver to go catch the show at Red Rocks tomorrow night.
Nice.
And then
that's so cool.
Do a lot of chores around the house for the remaining.
Yeah, you make up for your time.
Yeah.
So this popped into my head just now. Who's a bigger fan? You of what's the name of the band again?
Jimmy Eat World.
Jimmy Eat World.
Yeah.
Or Nate with Blink-182. Who takes the cake for bigger fan?
I would have to say Nate. I mean, granted,
Okay.
I really like. There are certain. So my favorite band of all time is probably a band called Further Seems Forever.
Okay.
I would say, and that's like kind of like moment in life kind of thing or whatever. But even a lot of these bands have like some sort of evolution where I kind of stopped listening to them at a certain point.
Yeah.
And so Jimmy Eat World, I listen to those older albums all the time, but like a lot of their newer stuff, I don't really pay as much attention to. Maybe that's just me setting my ways. I've heard like your music tastes are basically like firmly set in college, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
makes
and
sense.
I may be a example of how that is true.
Okay.
So
Nice. And then for those listening, if you know Nate Eric, he's one of our account managers. He loves Blink-182.
Yeah.
He's aspires to be them, and he actually made his own album that's on Spotify.
Yeah.
I forget the name of it because I want to give him a shout out. But if you search Nate Eric, and it's Nate and with the number 8, he actually created kind of like a similar sort of punk rock album, and it's I will say this, it's actually pretty good for a 44-year-old man in his garage with some tools and some whatever and I think he actually did some of the actual instruments himself, maybe the drums. Nonetheless, it's pretty cool. But well, good luck. Hope to see you come back. Not too much in a daze. It's high elevation up there, low oxygen.
Yeah.
Mixed with some other things that might happen. So be careful, Matt.
I'm going to do my best.
Okay. Well, with that being said, folks, let's dive into the drilling fluids world. Matt, so topic that sort of I thought of, we always talk about hole cleaning, and it depends on what's going on downhole. Well, there's two type of sort of instabilities. You can get chemical instability, reactive shales, or you can get mechanical. And I thought it'd just be cool to just kind of sort of break down each bucket, explain it a little bit more in details, and then just sort of considerations if you have one type, how you would address it to hopefully get to TD and get casing in the ground. What do you think?
I think it's interesting. I think it's good, and there's some nuance to this because you sort of you have a problem causing a problem,
Yeah.
So kind of thinking about those layers.
Okay, well, let's dive into just sort of like high level speaking, hole cleaning considerations. Let's start there.
Well, we do our well planning, and we start with a hydraulic model that assumes our cuttings are a certain size, and a caving is not a cutting. And I run into this conversation a lot where you'll be talking to somebody and they will call a caving a cutting. And I'm like, no, we need to draw the difference because one of these is considerably bigger, which means it's going to need more energy to flow. It's going to take longer to circulate out of the well. There's a lot of other things you have to think about. And is it just a couple of them, or is the well unloading on you?
Yeah.
And then, kind of tied into that, a cutting came off my drill bit. That's like part of the hole I wanted to make.
Right.
But if a caving is part of my hole got bigger, and so in light of that, what happens with the size of your annular or the size of your annulus and your overall annular velocity? So there may be a chance where I have a larger annulus and I have bigger stuff to move. So AVs drop and I need more energy to move these cavings. This can be kind of your nightmare scenario. And so you've got to weigh all of that in the context of the whole challenge you're having.
Yeah. No, that's it's good because, like you said, you hear both, but it's important to distinguish which one it actually is, and it's noticeable. Unless you've been at the shakers, you might not, or unless you've had the experience to identify both of them. But if you think chunk of rock coming out of hole, it's cutting. Until you maybe get educated or you've done a little research to understand the difference. But good place to start. Now let's go on one side of the spectrum here. Let's talk about reactive shales.
Yes. So, of course, I'm trying to remain somewhat agnostic to mud type, but that's probably not a good idea. So I'll start with, in particular, water-based when we're in a dispersive formation. So, in essence, we're just causing a ton of washout. It might not actually be creating as much of a challenge, because everything's dispersing. It's going to be that anything that doesn't disperse, you drill into the next, interbedded layer below it, that's going to work its way up to that troublesome area that you encountered and just kind of, it could, I wish I could draw this or something, but for the video people, watch my hands, it gets up into that annular space and just kind of hangs around for a while and then could want to fall back down. Well, you've got more and more of that stuff and then you run into some other risks of pack off or other challenges. But a lot of the dispersive scenarios are going to come possibly knocking some of that stuff loose if it gets held up on a ledge, maybe either on a trip, like a risk of a pack off, or running casing sometimes, hanging up on a ledge. So hole cleaning might not be as much of a challenge in that immediate area because your cuttings are effectively little pieces, solubilized effectively into your base fluid. Yep. However, it's going to be a problem everywhere else. Right. And from a swelling clay perspective, keep in mind that on the swelling clay, you may have some tight hole, but it may be also that this is a bunch of stuff stuck to your BHA. You're probably having drilling issues as well, that you need to get all this gummed up stuff off of all your pipe and metal. Mm-hmm. And so, obviously there's part of the hole you're losing, but probably from a reactive clay perspective, it's going to be the broader hole issues you're going to have, possibly being under gauge and that sort of thing. But from a how do I get this out? I have to break it up. It's almost like I'm wishing I had that dispersed situation at that point. Yeah,
in a reactive shale, is it quite possible that depending on the lithology, like the type of rock, that your hole could essentially fall apart and unload on you? Or is that more, can it happen both in a mechanically weak shale and a reactive shale, or is that more specific to mechanical?
I would say it's less likely from my experience. And those are just parts of the world I've worked. There's an argument to be made. I haven't encountered it, but I guess I could see it happening where, let's say you clear a rubble zone and don't really have any trouble. Think of you're near a salt or something, right? Mm-hmm. So you clear a rubble zone and don't really see any cavings or any issues, and then you wash part of it out underneath, and now all of a sudden you free up all that rubble or, that transition zone. Yeah. And it starts unloading on you. So some of these things may be able to sort of happen together. Yeah. And so I think that goes back to, we'll weigh more on this in kind of a broader wrap-up, but you have to think about what is actually happening. You got to work on your diagnosis because, you got this whole cleaning issue, but you also have this immediate issue that you probably need to do some kind of treatment to address. Yeah. Or, adjust your game plan.
Okay, got it. Now let's jump over on the other side of the fence. Let's talk about mechanically weak shales or mechanically weak rock.
Trying to break this up, I was just thinking of your different types of cavings that you think about, right? And we've discussed these in the past, but starting with just overpressured shale. So you may be in a depleted zone or somewhere, and you have this shale that's got much higher pore pressure, and it's unloading on you. So this is those long splintery cavings. Mm-hmm. Normally, you're getting a lot of them at the same time. it's not hard. When I need a sample of these, I can get a bucket of them.
Yeah.
Because in essence, the well bore is failing around the whole circumference of the well. It's not, too stress plane, just kind of weak break off. This is the whole well is coming in.
Yeah.
And so here, like, the most obvious immediate thing you need to do is you need to wait up. You need to stop this from continuing.
Mm-hmm.
But the other aspect of this is you probably need to slow down drilling because you don't want to keep moving forward and exposing more of the formation that is also going to unload on you.
Yep. Yep.
And then in light of all that, you get your density, you get back to stability, hopefully. You're going to need some time to work your way out of this because you do definitely have a larger annulus all the way around. You've got these splintery shale that you got a large volume of at once, no question. And so making sure that those things that are bigger than cuttings are effectively worked out. So you got to be real careful on your tripping practices. You've got to be, quite mindful that you have been patient and worked your way through all this stuff, and that it stopped before you go run casing.
Yeah.
And if it's really bad and you can't get it under control, you may just need to say, that's my casing point. So that's something that I would say on kind of the splintery stuff. When we get into cavings that are more like platy or tabular, so this is, usually intersection of bedding planes, well trajectory kind of stuff. Sometimes these ones are a bit weird because they can be a little time dependent. Basically fluid working its way into those laminations. And so it may be that it's not till you're coming out of the hole or, on a trip that you're going to see this. So it can unload fairly quickly. Not always. But here again, when we think about hole cleaning, the important thing here is optimizing your ECDs.
Yeah.
Because, all of these, that's true, but if you keep forcing fluid into these open natural fractures or laminations, you're going to keep getting rock back. And so can I get this big slug of cuttings cavings, I need to use my correct terminology. If I'm getting this big slug of fluid back, I'm actually going to elevate my ECDs and push more fluid in.
Yeah.
Right? So this is kind of a slow and steady work your way out of this stuff and be very mindful on your trips. Be very mindful of your circulating pressures. What has the well already seen? Those kinds of questions. And it may be that you probably don't necessarily want to wait up, but you probably want to try and keep things really stable. Whatever stress regime you've reached, try not to change it around too much.
Yeah.
But in light of that, circulating this stuff out, you may want to be a little more patient as far as how you get these things out, just by way of forcing more fluid in between those laminations.
Okay.
And then the blocky cavings, usually this is when you're going to wait up and hopefully just reach a stable regime where depending on how many of these things you've got, how what loading you sort of seem to see at the shakers. Another thing with all of these is look at your torque trends. If things are really erratic, you probably have piles of this stuff downhole you need to work through. Like, once you have some sort of system stability, if you don't have too many of these, you just need to, you can kind of work your way through it, and hole cleaning might not be the same kind of issue. And a lot of this will be related to if you can keep this kind of less than 90 degrees of the wellbore, it's just they're gonna those failures are gonna happen sort of opposite each other. You'll have sort of I don't know how to describe it, like a stretched oval. And in light of that, yes, you'll have a larger annulus and that sort of thing, but you'll have this new sort of steady state, and it should sort of enable you to keep moving.
Okay.
So, I have had situations where it took us several days of circulating huge chunks of blocky cavings out of the well, and then ultimately we reached that sort of steady state, and we were able to do whatever we needed to do. It was very strange.
When it comes to that kind of stuff, sometimes it takes time, and it typically when you're on a rig and operators, time is of the essence. But sometimes you get folks doing cleanup cycles, and they're willing to wait 6 or 8 hours. It's the same thing if you're having instability. Sometimes you just need to get it up and get all that junk out of the hole.
Yep.
And if it's unloading, well, for one, people freak out, but for two, it's good that it's coming out of the hole, because if it's down there, that means there's a good chance you might get planted and it might pile on top of you and you have all sorts of heck. So anyway, when you get into unstable formations, and unfortunately the hole starts unloading or getting unstable, you just have to be patient. And before you start going ahead and trying to just squeak your way to TD, do the right thing and kind of back off and take your time. But you never want to be the one on location say, no, I think we should just circulate until this cleans up. Unless it's the company rep, then obviously everyone's like, yes, great idea. But anyone else is kind of like, oh, I don't know if I want to suggest that, because who's going to pay for that time?
Right. I think that, if everybody can get on the same page of the risk of not doing it, it becomes valuable.
Right.
And kind of, this is where you want to, the data you can maybe hope to envision is, hey, I've got my hydraulics program open. What should we assume this hole size is at this point? If we've pumped a sweep, can we tell that like it's crazy washed out because the sweep is showing up insanely late and it's like sitting somewhere and getting all strung out? From your fluids program perspective, like the real easy stuff, should I just tighten up my fluid loss because it's something I can do right now?
Yeah.
But on the hydraulic side, being able to say, okay, here's kind of where we're at. Here, if you have one of the transient or semi-transient models where you can sort of model, larger cavings, and how long does that take comparatively to clean up? What fluid properties do I need? That can be super helpful. And then, it's scary. Like, hey guys, let's slow down drilling. Like, not a popular opinion ever. But some of these things, if you get ahead of yourself too far, you're going to plant the BHA.
Yeah.
So let's at least get everybody comfortable that the measure of risk we're taking is going to be worth it in the end.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot you can do there where if you take 30 minutes, update all your models, what new information do I have? The EDR can be very, very helpful. When did we start seeing this? What depth? What did the geologists say? Like, did we cut into something, or any information that I didn't have when I wrote the fluids program that I have now because of either downhole instrumentation data, what the rig is telling me, what the shakers are telling me. Like, let's triangulate all of that stuff and update our game plan, and then monitor very carefully what's happening. But a lot of this stuff is not necessarily, I think, as much of a mystery as it is getting everybody on the same page. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes hydraulics can be the unifying thing because, like, hey, here's my models. If you don't think the hole's washed out, then what do you want me to put in here? And we can sort of test those things and say, okay, the well isn't responding the way the model's showing. I think we got to revisit what's going on down there.
Yeah.
Regardless of what your sort of hole failure mechanism is, there's a lot of things you can look at, both in real time and just, the shakers, what are they telling you? This is, as annoying as it is, saying, hey, mud engineer should be out there by the shakers and everything. Like, when there's something going on, that is the best place to be.
Yeah.
It's just what you see coming across there and your experience of seeing that versus other places can be dramatically impactful as far as what we really think is going on. We need to back it up with some data and science. It can't just be gut. But
sometimes,
it'll take you places.
Gut is good.
Absolutely.
And if you can match it with a little science, then that's a big win.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, folks, that wraps it up, Matt. You kind of tied it up with a nice bow there towards the end. We got all our considerations out of the way. Again, if anyone out there has any thoughts, questions, again, this was pretty high level. We could have spent a lot of time in just reactive shales and what's going on with the chemistry and the different fluids and how you respond. But I wanted to sort of just kind of keep it broad enough, like to where operationally you can kind of chew on it. But if you have any questions or if you want us to dive deeper into anything we did talk about today, please let us know. You can reach us on LinkedIn, or you can reach us at the Flowline podcast at aesfluids.com. be sure to check out the website. The tech tips on YouTube are great. We've got tech bites that are little short clips of just great educational content. And just continue to look out for more content coming down the way in form of education. And until next time, folks, take care. Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. Please tune in next week for another exciting episode of the Flowline. And remember, may your returns always be full and your trips always smooth. Views expressed in this program belong to participants and not their employees. The program is for informational purposes only and cannot take the place of seeking professional advice. Copyright AES Drilling Fluids.